Zone of the Enders: The Second Runner is a mech-based action game that was developed and published by Konami and released on the PS2 in February of 2003. A sequel to the original Zone of the Enders, released just under 2 years earlier, The Second Runner was seen as an improvement on the first game, although its sales figures were not very impressive at all, leaving the franchise on the shelf ever since. This game takes place 2 years after the events of the first game, and the story focuses on Dingo Egret, who is a miner on one of the moons of Jupiter. Dingo discovers Jehuti buried in the ice and is left with no choice but to jump into the mech as the Barham group shows up once again to destroy or capture Jehuti. Dingo is introduced to the onboard AI known as Ada, who guides him through his first few battles, and then they run into Jehuti's counterpart, Anubis, who quickly deals with both of them. Anubis is an unbelievably powerful mech and is being piloted by Dingo's former colonel, known as Noman. He offers Dingo an opportunity to join the Barham group, and Dingo says, no thanks, and Noman replies, with Dingo on the brink of death, he is rescued by a woman named Ken, who somehow attaches him to Jehuti as some sort of lifeport machine. Ken then reveals that she's working undercover to take down Noman, and that if Dingo does not help her, she'll turn off Jehuti's life support. Now, in some ways, the plot is a little overly complex at times, but when you realise that Hideo Kojima was the producer of this title, it all starts to make sense. Is it all a bit stupid? Yes. Is it all a bit cheesy? Yes, but does this make it any less enjoyable? No, not at all.
He's got a stable pulse.
Now, just like the first game, The Second Runner is very much the same fast-paced hack-and-slash action, with a few meaningful additions thrown in to make the combat more interesting. You come equipped with both close and long-range attacks, and in order to progress, you will have to get some use out of all of the weapons in your arsenal. The first game allowed you to be a bit more button-mashy, but for this game you are required to keep your distance and try and do some damage with your energy attacks that can help you keep a crowd at bay, and when you spot an opportunity to dash in and kill an enemy with your blade, it's best to do it quick and try and back out again so you're not overwhelmed. There is a wider variety of enemies this time around, which all come with their own strengths and weaknesses and require a different strategy to take them down, meaning when you're locked in a battle with multiple enemies of different types, you have to think a little about your approach. The speed at which everything moves can be slightly disorienting at first, but due to the lock-on system, it's not too hard to keep up with the action, and although it may seem frantic to look at, it's much more simple than it appears. Once you've spent some time with the game and you're familiar with how to pull off your different attacks and combos and how to time your blocks, it's a tremendous amount of fun to zip around the environment scrapping with so many enemies. On the downside, the camera does get quite tight at times, so this does obstruct your view somewhat, and although the game tries to compensate for this by placing a ring around you that detects incoming threats, you'll still take a fair few shots from off-screen that can be frustrating when it feels like they've thrown way too many enemies at you at the same time. I think that is my main gripe with this game. It's not a big one, but when faced with a large number of enemies, your best bet is to attack from distance because they can gang up on you very quickly. The trouble is, attacking from distance also takes a long time, so if you chip away at an enemy's health for a few minutes, only to be taken out by someone else and have to restart the entire encounter, it does suck the fun out of it a little bit. It's not all just scraps against mech henchmen though. Boss battles do make a return, and there are plenty. The boss battles are interesting. They all place a focus on being cautious and picking up on attack patterns. They also strike the right balance of difficulty and bring variety to the gameplay, so it's always a pleasure when a boss character shows up. For me, an area in which The Second Runner shines is its visuals and overall presentation. Not only does the game retain the cool futuristic look of the original, but the decision to change to anime cutscenes instead of the bland 3D cutscenes in the first game is definitely an improvement in my opinion.
If anything happens to my pals on Callisto, you'll pay.
This animated style is also sprinkled into the gameplay as it combines the usual 3D models with cel-shaded effects for explosions and general destruction. It is a small change, but it goes a long way. As it is a Kojima-influenced game, this means long stretches of dialogue and exposition, which are aided by animation. There's plenty of anime chatter going on in the foreground, with also some nice 3D cutscenes combined that take place in the background. There is something about the design of this game that I personally love, and I think the highlight of it all is the mechs. They are both incredibly intricate and just plain cool to look at, especially in the cutscenes that feature the usual Kojima cinematic touches. Sound design is fantastic, with a full original score that not only complements the light-speed combat, but also adds to the epicness of the story towards the tail end, and you can't help but get caught up in some of the more dramatic moments. Sound effects of the mechs whizzing around each other is also well done, and I think the only part of it that felt a little lazy is there is clearly some sound effects, especially in the menus, that are just straight up ripped from Metal Gear Solid 2. As mentioned earlier, the plot is kind of stupid and cheesy, and for a story like this, you need the voice actors to deliver a certain level of enthusiasm, because if not, it's just a silly story that you don't care about. Luckily, the voice actors put 110% into their work here.
Do you realize how many of my comrades died back there? Say it. You killed them!
So when I reviewed the original Zone of the Enders roughly a year ago, I said that it was a unique action title that deserved to be played, even though the sequel is superior, and I give it 4 stars out of 5. After playing the second runner, all of this still holds true. This game is superior to its predecessor in every single way. It retains the over-the-top but likeable story and characters, but adds more depth. It retains the fast and fun combat, but with new attacks added in for more variety, and it also retains its sharp visuals, but with a new mixture of 3D and 2D animation. With all of these additions, the second runner does come with some new issues, such as a choppy frame rate and occasionally frustrating combat scenarios, but overall, it's still a great experience that is absolutely worth your time.